All right, yo, it's your boy Yoshi Kid Neo, and we are back with another rendition of the Diaries. We've actually skipped the last 3 sessions. I've kind of neglected doing them because I've been busy and too tired and yada yada yada. I could make excuses all day, but it's time to get back into the groove of things. So, I apologize for anyone that actually watches these. But we've got a lot to go over today, so I do apologize ahead of time if I don't read chat. I will be focusing on trying to get this information out for these sessions, so let's go on and get into it, shall we? So, the last session that I need to go over is session 8, Welcome to Creyate. So let's go ahead and hop over the world map. So if we look, this is the world map. The party during session 7 were right here where Cassiel had died to the Royal Griffin. It was a very even battle, and the tide started to turn in favor of the party, especially after Lloyd got his slow spell off. And one thing I've noticed with a wizard on the team, or really anyone that has a slow spell, if it is a single creature versus a party of 4 people and they get slowed, they're pretty much doomed. So it was actually very lucky that the abilities of the Griffin were able to go off and make sure that the rest of the team were pretty much unable to do what they were trying to do because of either fear or some type of charmed effect or not being close enough to hit the Griffin. So the mobility of the Griffin definitely saved its hide here. And what ended up being the turning point of the whole thing, because it was very even, I think, up until round 3. Round 3, Cassiel dished out like 100 damage to the Griffin, knocking it to about half HP. And that's when the Griffin decided, okay, this is the guy I'm going for anyway. I've seen the way or I can smell him very well now. So now that he's been up close, he's the guy. And in one turn, he was able to obliterate Cassiel. And then he went on to other prey, but noticed that the Griffin noticed that she was about to lose. So she took Cassiel's life just to make sure that her revenge was enacted and ran away. From then, the characters had buried Cassiel and began to move on their way with their new commoner and his frail, comatose daughter. And the party obviously had to get introduced to a new character, which I will bring him up real quick. This is Three-Toed Jim. So Three-Toed Jim is a halfling barbarian, Path of the Totem Warrior. This is Joe's new character. And Three-Toed Jim is a very interesting backstory. I love how Joe wrote his backstory. He is known as Three-Toed Jim because he literally only has 3 toes left. I believe it is his big toe and both his pinky toes. I don't remember which foot has the big toe, but I'm pretty sure I'm close. Anyway, a witch or hag. Actually, I can just show you guys that. Let's see, Three-Toed Jim. So this lady, Rusty May, which actually, she's the reason that Three-Toed Jim is 3 toes. Three-Toed Jim ran into her, and she took all but 3 of his toes and captured a member of his family for each toe that she took. She then scattered the toes across the entire land, so they could be literally anywhere, and said that each toe will consist of a trial. If Three-Toed Jim and whoever he's with can overcome said trial, and he gets a toe back, she will fork over one of his family members. So his first clue after years of searching for clues is to come here to Bleakbell, which happens to be where the rest of the party have been ushered to go based on their own personal backstories or based on what Lord Saxon has told them. So as the party is moving through, for about, because they had another 4 days, I believe, from this point to get to Creyate. Midway through is when they meet Three-Toed Jim, and he came riding on a Mastiff, which is a dog for those that don't know. Mastiff named Seymour. And Seymour is not made for combat. He's literally just there to be a mount, which was Joe's intention, because he doesn't really, he doesn't need a mount, or he doesn't need a companion, especially as a barbarian. It's kind of, you know, I'm cool with anyone having a companion and an additional like turn, but with 5 players, combat usually already gets confusing, and I don't think that he wants for the dog in combat to die, which I don't want to kill the dog either. And, you know, depending on what the creatures are that they're fighting, a lot of creatures would see the dog probably as easier prey, if not the halfling itself, because of its size. But anyway, Three-Toed Jim rolls in, meets up with the party. They're heading to the same place. He's like, let me join you. And they're like, sure. So they start talking. He gives them a little bit of backstory about who he is, where he came from, and what his goals are, which is pretty much what I told you. He's looking for his toes so he can free his family and get revenge on Rusty May. Although I don't know if he's actually looking for revenge on Rusty May, or if he's just like, whatever, you did some bad things, I just want to save my family. I don't really know. But that's when the gentleman that they're with, who still has not been asked for a name, went into telling the story about how he was a wealthy merchant living in this location over here, Creyate, the trade city. And one day he ended up finding a really ancient artifact. Old woman came in to sell it, or to buy it, and he said, no, I've already got a seller. And that very night, that same old woman had essentially come in and done something to his daughter. After that woman had disappeared without a trace, the man had gone searching for some way to bring his daughter out of a coma. No one had answers until he made it to the swamps over here. And actually, this is what Three-Toed Jim knows, is that Rusty May lives somewhere in this vicinity, but they're not exactly sure where. But this gentleman had come and he was given information from Rusty May about how to possibly, keyword possibly, rescue his daughter. And he produced a pitch black flower that he called the Neverbloom. And he said that he's got to take this Neverbloom to a certain location with his daughter, and hopefully it makes it bloom and it will release her from her coma. He's not exactly sure where he needs to go. He just knows that it's north of Creyate. From there, the party, I think, literally took zero interest, and we're like, cool story, bro. Anyway, back to the halfling, because this seems neat. And they just started talking with him. And that was pretty much the entire session up until, actually, no. They got to Creyate. And when they got to Creyate, let's see, let's go to the map here. They got to Creyate, and as they were coming through the main entrance here, right around here, there was a public gathering, and everybody that was gathered there were essentially listening to a gentleman, which I will bring through real quick. Anyway, they were listening to a gentleman essentially question some people. Ooh, that's not, I didn't mean for all those dice to pop in. That's the Dice So Nice module. It's pretty neat. It actually shows us some virtual die whenever you make a roll of any kind. So pretty neat. Doesn't actually serve any purpose except for giving you the thought process of, oh, I'm actually rolling dice, which is cool. So anyway, this gentleman Gower is running what is known as a public confession. So he's got 2 people in a cage, and they're kind of suspended by shackles inside of the cage, and he keeps on provoking them and questioning them and telling them to confess their sins. Obviously, from what the party heard, is that each of them had committed some sort of crime using arcane magic and were being sentenced to something based on their confession. Both of these people ended up dying by Gower's hand with what Lloyd would know is animate objects spell. So they know that Gower has access to the animate object spell, and he used it to kill the gentleman that did confess very quickly and the gentleman that didn't confess very slowly. But either way, both of them did die, and they are no more. Then they crowd parted ways as Gower walked towards the main gate, and as Gower got close to where he could see the party easily, he looked over, smiled at them, and walked away. And the party walked through to the gate, where the guards told them that without an invitation at this time, they could not enter until the public confession has been completed, in which another NPC had rolled in. This NPC is named Firo. And if you've watched any of my older campaigns, actually, if you watch my very first campaign, Firo happens to be one of the main NPCs the party talked to whenever they were in a location called Cragstorm. So Firo pops in, says he's got an invitation for the party to go see Lord Saxon. The guards kind of stumble on their words and then permit them through. Firo brings them in. They park their horse and cart inside of this area, which is where the stables and stuff are. And then they make their way over here, which is Lord Saxon's estate. That's where we ended that session. So now we'll move on to part 9, which is the Lion's Den, which this was a straight up roleplay only session as well. And it started with the party being invited into Lord Saxon's estate. The gentleman that they still don't know his name and his daughter were told to bugger off and go find some other place to stay, which they had agreed to go meet Firo at the, I believe it was the Breaking Gnome, this tavern right here. So there's 2 taverns right next to each other, the Breaking Gnome and the Halfling and the Hope, which, if the party ever come back here and go there, these are like rival taverns, literally across from each other. It could be very fun if they do go there, but we'll see. So Joe, if you're watching this, actually you're probably not ever wanting to come back here because of what's going to happen next session. But anyway, so they begin talking to Lord Saxon, and the only issue that I had with this session was the fact that we had 2 members miss it. So it was kind of hard to know if Agent J or Trina had anything to say to Lord Saxon, but we retconned the following session to allow them time to speak. Agent J didn't have anything to say, but Trina had some questions. But essentially, Lord Saxon had offered the party 2 things. One, he offered them to work together to become partners, and with his abilities and his knowledge and with their skills and power and strength, they could do anything that they put their minds to. And Lord Saxon wanted to get into a working relationship with the party after he had apologized for Cassiel's death. He had seen into the future to the point where he knew that the Griffin would fight the party, but he didn't look any further because he didn't want to spoil the ending of what would happen, which he said is one of the bad things about seeing the future and knowing what is going to happen is life becomes very dull. So he does this in order to sort of spice things up for him. But had he known that Cassiel was going to die, he wouldn't have done it. Because according to Lord Saxon, his main goal was just to give Cassiel that enemy that he needed in order to get to his ascension point into the upper planes and, please the Archangel of Judgment. But unfortunately, he couldn't tell Cassiel this because then it would have been for naught. So he was going to play the part of the villain to aid Cassiel in his ultimate goal, which is also why he was very vague in what he had seen in the future of Cassiel, because he didn't want to tell him, oh yeah, your future is defeating me, and here's a hint, you don't, because, that's not very fun. So he kept Cassiel guessing. At least that was his goal. I don't know if it actually worked. Joe, you let me know. So anyway, he profusely apologized for that, said that he'll do his best to avoid anything like that again. And then the party were like, all right, yeah, we'd be willing to work with you. He's like, all right, cool. Well, there's one condition, and that's you have to make sure you live first. And they're like, what does that mean? He's like, I looked into your futures again, and I didn't see anything. So as I started to come back, bring back the years a bit, I saw that your demise was met by a gentleman named Gower, which is one of the high inquisitors of one of the churches. Happens to be the Abbey of Faithful Followers Church. He is a high inquisitor. So they've already met Gower. They've seen what he's kind of capable of. They know he's got some type of magic that he uses, but obviously he's allowed to use it because it's a divine gift from his god or goddess. They don't know exactly, but based on what they've known and what they've heard about this empire is arcane magic that you pursue on your own is outlawed almost to the extreme. It's not outlawed like all the way, but you have to jump through so many hoops that it might as well be outlawed. But if you have the divine gift given to you by a god or goddess and it has been deemed divine by the church, you're allowed to use it as long as it's obviously within certain guidelines, which Gower, I guess depending on how you want to look at it, meant to get rid of that. Anyway, so Gower, obviously the party aren't really big fans of him, just based on what they've heard and what they've seen, and they want to avoid him at all costs. But Lord Saxon says that they meet their demise by Gower, and then he starts to look into the future and says you're going to meet him very soon because he's actually at the tavern already speaking with your companion. I don't know what exactly they're talking about, but why else would he talk to this random dude except for the fact that he saw him come in with you guys? So now the party knows that Gower's already caught their scent. There's something, like he's got some type of intuition where when they entered and they made eye contact, that Gower knew straight away, those are mages. Those guys practice the arcane and not the divine arts. So now they're like, oh shit, he's onto us. We gotta think fast. They asked some other questions and things like that, which Lord Saxon was like, yeah, I'm down to help you, but first you gotta, do these things so that I know that you're alive so I can help you. The only thing that Agent J had brought up was the fact that Lord Saxon said that he could help him fix his watch. And really what it was is that he knew of an artificer that has somewhat delved in these sort of futuristic technologies, and he knows about where he could possibly find more information. But if he's not going to survive, there's no real reason in giving it to him. So he said, make sure you survive and I will help you to the utmost of my ability find out this information because I'm still searching for it. In which Agent J was like, tight, I'm cool with that. I believe Trina asked him some other questions, but I honestly forget exactly what it was because we kind of went over it very quickly. So that was my bad. But either way, they finished their conversation with Saxon. They left. And instead of going to meet Firo, because Firo had offered them, a little chat and possibly some type of employment if they meet him at the Breaking Gnome. Instead of doing that, since that's where they were told Gower was at, they instead went straight to the stables. They got a hold of the stable boy. They whispered him over. And a very under-the-table transaction occurred. They sold their old cart and their old horse because it was currently being investigated and searched by the Inquisitors as well, in which the stable boy had told them that they found a sort of like a false opening in it, and inside of there were a bunch of like alchemical supplies and magical components and even a spell book. And the party's like, yo, fuck, we've been framed. Damn it. So now they got to get rid of that cart. They bought a new cart and they bought 2 more horses. And they're like, cool, now we got this new hot ride. Go and fetch that for us. We'll finish the transaction in this alleyway. and then we'll be on our way. Which is exactly what happened. They paid, I think, 225 gold pieces. They gave an additional like 10 gold pieces for the stable boy to keep as quiet as possible. And then they went from here and booked it. And I think I had them roll something. I think I had them roll like some type of, maybe it was a D100. I'm almost certain I made them roll a D100. And based on that roll, they would get stopped by the town guard as they were exiting, because at this current time, they were dicking around, I think. Anyway, at this current time, they were on their way out of the town during the mass. So literally all the streets were pretty much, there was no one there. Nobody was around. It was super silent. It was almost like a ghost town because everyone went to their various churches and were in the middle of worship. So the guards, seeing these people leaving, they're like, "Oi, what are you doing? It's communion time." And they're like, "Oh, we were told to go and do this instead, to deliver these supplies." And they're like, "Oh, you got to go to the devoted temple of wretches. That makes so much sense. Cool. On you go." And that was based on their D100 roll that even happened. But their persuasiveness was really good, so I was like, yeah, I'll let them have that one. So they exit Creyate. They literally spent a session here, but it was all inside of Lord Saxon's location, speaking to him. And then, yeah, that was the end of the session. Now, we go to session 10, Onward to the Harbor. And this was a very roleplay heavy session as well, which actually had a very, very big development at the end. So let's see, they get to the port city here. So we'll keep it on this for the rest of this video because it will not take very long. So the party is on their way to this port city, and on the way there, only one major thing happened, and that's that there was a solar eclipse. So the moon overcame the sun as it was setting, and the world fell into darkness, or twilight, I guess you could say. The world fell into a twilight for just a matter of like 30-45 seconds. As that happened, there was a prison carriage essentially coming through, and there was a madman inside of that cage, and he was reaching out towards the sun, shouting that he has to go back to the stone. He's not done with the stone. He has to go and give what the stone needs, and blah, blah, blah. And he was actually mutilating himself, trying to get out of this cage, in which the guards got down, beat him senseless, so that he would shut up and, actually, not harm himself anymore. So they stunned him, and then they chained him up, and they actually used, Three-Toe Jim had bought a healer's kit, and they had used one charge of that to make sure the dude was stabilized, and then they were on their way. But what they got out of that was that people have been coming back from Bleakbell lately, and they've been mad. They've been insane. They've been talking about the stone. They've been talking about the moon. They don't know what exactly this means. They haven't had the time or the resources to go and send people to investigate. But what they have been doing is capturing some of these folks and bringing them to the Inquisition back in Creyate for questioning. So the party knows that this is happening. They know that Bleakbell, something strange is happening, so we need to get there ASAP. As they arrive in Bleakbell, they go to the stable master and they talk to him. They end up paying, I think it was 10 gold. No, I think it was 5 gold a day, and they were expecting to be gone for 10 days. So it was like 50 gold to stable their horses, keep them nice and clean, fed, watered, and to do minor repairs on their cart, which, since it's a brand new cart, doesn't need much. Very cool. So the party drop that off and they get some information. They know where the inn/tavern is, and they know where the harbor master is, so they can procure their tickets to get to Bleakbell. So they move out, they split up, and Some of them go to the tavern. The rest of them go to the harbor master. At the harbor master, I believe it was Lloyd, and I want to say it was Kai, maybe Three-Toe Jim. I think it was those three. My memory is fading from me about what happened. But anyway, 3 of them went to the harbor master. They procured tickets for the following morning, early in the morning, for passageway to Bleakbell. They were given their tickets, and then that was it. It was a very easy transaction. The others went to the tavern, and they heard all types of, barfing, fighting, sexual relations, every type of sin you could think would happen when sailors come home for just a few days on shore. They heard it, saw it, smelt it, and that was all going down by Sailor's Abbey, or Alley, Sailor's Alley. So Trina and Dr. Thorpe procured a table, and they started to order some beverages and food while they waited out the nighttime before the rest of the party came by. And the most things that were going on was very, very minor. A lot of random NPCs, no-named NPCs, came up, offered their services, or made fun of the party, what have you. They were just doing their thing, and they didn't want to be bothered. Well, in the middle of all this, I had typed into the chat that some guards had come by, and they had sat down, and they were just looking at everything going on. And it wasn't until Kai was telling his backstory, because they had just met Kai, and oh shit, I completely forgot how I introduced Kai. So back up to the beginning of this session, and after they had seen that madman, they continued, and Agent J's watch started working again. He got a call saying that they had fixed their transponder or something like that. They had sent him a teleporter, and he needed to walk through the portal. Well, a black portal with sort of like a red ring of fire around it appeared, and Agent J ran towards it. As he did, a large arm reached out, grabbed him, picked him up, and a large minotaur creature exited the portal, started talking some trash, threw Agent J through the portal, and that's where Kai came in. So Kai, a young boy with 2 samurai swords, he had appeared through the portal with this minotaur, and they had squared off to go and fight. And the minotaur noticed the rest of the party and said, maybe you can make some new friends and actually have a chance of winning this time. In which we had a combat, because it had been a while. They had fought a creature that I threw at the party in the Kingdoms of Boridil, known as the Chosen of Baphomet, a homebrew style minotaur that's pretty much just a very beefy boy. So they fought this guy, and it was a very, very one-sided battle. As you can actually, I don't know if it was one-sided per se, but if you look at all the party members, the only one that didn't get touched was Lloyd, and that's because he purposefully stayed like 50 feet away the entire time. He cast some spells from afar, and that was pretty much it. Everybody else ended up getting close enough to where the Chosen could use his multi-attack on them, and that was essentially the repercussions. And the thing to take of note here is that Three-Toe Jim was enraged, and he got dropped to 59 hit points out of 101. Being a totem of the warrior, he is resistant to all damage except for psychic, which he did take 1 iteration of psychic damage, which is actually hilarious. I didn't actually intend for that to happen, but Gerald had literally come to me an hour before the session asking to switch characters, so I had to kind of make something up. So I made this demon lord that had already marked Kai, or not a demon lord, but this demon that had already had a like a quarrel with Kai, essentially have captured him from many, many, many hundreds of years ago, and he's been torturing him for that entire time. So Kai, every time they come to the material plane, is essentially fighting for his freedom. And it just so happens the Chosen of Baphomet chose incorrectly on who his allies would be, because they almost defeated him. Well, I guess in theory they did defeat him because he did run away. And when I say run away, he teleported away back to the Abyss, where he would await finding other people to come and recapture Kai at some point in time. So they ended up beating that creature, so that was very good. Then they got to the town and all this stuff happened. So now we'll fast forward. Kai was telling his story of who he is. He has the goal of becoming the greatest monster hunter that the world has ever known. He stands up on the table and he stabs his blade into the table. And from there, some of the patrons started yelling, "Oh, you're going to have to pay for that." And he's like, "Oh, shit, you're right." So he takes his blade out. And that's when Lloyd kneels over, casts his mending spell, and mends the table. At this point, because Kai was shouting and stabbed the table, a lot of patrons, including every single guard that was in the location, were already fixated on what was going on. And the moment Lloyd cast that spell, all the guards stood up and started to casually walk over, and the party members were all like, fuck. It was hilarious. Anyway, this gentleman, Armin Gray, which I don't think the party know his name, but they know what he looks like. He came up and had started to question what he just saw. And the party started, they didn't let Lloyd talk at all, which was actually probably their downfall because he caught on to that. They were like, "Oh yeah, he's a priest, you know, he has magic abilities from his goddess." He's like, "Okay, cool, which goddess is that?" And there was complete silence because I don't think many of the players besides Trina, I don't think any of the players actually have a god or goddess that they worship, except for Trina. She has her gods and goddesses because she essentially kind of created them, I guess, for the world. I would say so. They are already like, I think Irish folklore or something like that, but she had created them for her character that she's playing. So she has gods and goddesses that she worships, but the rest of the party I don't think do. So when he asked this question, Lloyd, aka Jeff, was literally like, I don't remember any of the gods. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, I mean, I don't think Lloyd actually worships anyone. You definitely don't have anything in your backstory about it. So we'll just assume that Lloyd has also forgotten most of who he could possibly worship to gain access to that type of spell. And so the guard, Armin Gray, was like, all right, cool. So, well, because of that, we're going to hold you here and we're going to contact an inquisitor to come here to question you. Because I highly doubt that you're registered as an arcane user, because if you were, you would have known not to cast that spell. No matter how harmless it is, I don't think you have a permit, in which they were like, yeah, we don't have a permit. Actually, I don't even think I brought up the permit, so that might have been my bad. But either way, the party doesn't have a permit for casting spells in public, regardless of what they are. So they told them to hang out here, and when it's time for us to move you to another location, we will come over. So enjoy your evening for what little time you have left. And that's where we ended that session. So that was 34 minutes for 3 sessions. I don't think that's very bad. Granted, it is kind of brushing over everything at a very fast pace, especially the RP, but you get the gist of it. A lot of RP in these past 3 sessions, except for the Chosen of Baphomet fight. That ended up taking like 2 hours, but it was a really good combat. I really enjoy playing that character, or running that monster rather. It's a lot of fun. So that was sessions 8, 9, and 10. Welcome to Creyate, to the Lion's Den, and onward to the harbor. Feel free to stop by tomorrow around 6 p.m. Mountain Time, as we will be seeing what happens from the consequences of Lloyd's actions. I've got a wonderful little twist prepared, so hopefully we'll see what the party does. I don't know what their intentions are, but I've prepared for it, hopefully. We'll see. So thanks everyone for coming out, and until we see you next time,